There we go.
All right, thank you. So we'll call to order the Longmont Housing and Human Service Advisory Board meeting Thursday, May 11th. Is there any public invited to be heard?
No.
No. Okay. Next item is approved minutes from April regular meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from April 13th.
Seems like we got a motion and a second. All in favor? Raise your hand. Got everybody? Motion
Okay.
passed. Next item is a site visit report, Bridge to Justice, and then Colorado Legal Services. So
Yeah, I will start both of these because Deanna's not here, but Robert came in at the tail end of the Bridge to Justice one.
I got lost. I lived in Boulder for 20 years and I couldn't find the damn place.
So that's all right.
I ended up at Eastern Boulder on Spruce Street. I ended up at Mustard's Last Stand. I don't know why. And it was across the street from the Old Aristocrat. If somebody had told me it was the building across the street from the Old Aristocrat,
I
I
don't
would have
even know
known
who the
where
old
it was.
aristocrat is, so. So yeah, so I'll go ahead and start both of these, and then Crystal was there for the Colorado Legal Services. So I'll go ahead and get started. Basically, it's always interesting to see legal agencies' desk audits because they are so meticulous. Both of these agencies had great bylaws, very well written. What I heard from Bridge to Justice is they are seeing a huge increase in their work on. They received a big grant from the city of Boulder to do eviction prevention in Boulder County, and that work is increasing. Bridge to Justice overall usually takes cases that Colorado Legal Services won't do. For example, Colorado Legal Services will do first degree, they won't do a second degree on family law. Bridge to Justice will. So they're seeing a lot of those type of cases, complicated cases that, you know, when I looked at their budget, I was like, Bruce, your budget's a little bit, you know, wonky, or not wonky, but you're in the red. He goes, yeah, that's because we're handling some very large cases that are taking a lot of time, and the money's coming in a little bit slower than they would want. But overall, they're in a good financial position. They're definitely growing in Boulder and Longmont. They are seeing their trends are an increase in housing in eviction cases and family cases, but they also do, interestingly enough, they do public benefit cases. So for example, if someone applies to SNAP or Medicaid and gets denied and appeal, they will support them through that appeal process. So they do a lot of good work. They are growing, and overall, I was pretty impressed with the organization. Christina, were you at that one? Could you make that one? I forget. No, you weren't able to make that. And
No.
Robert, anything else to add from that?
I was impressed with his ability to take a question and then find the answer, you know, in terms of statistics and things like that. He was just very good at answering questions and you know, not trying to evade them at all. That's what I was impressed with.
Yeah, I'm not sure the board has any questions for me about the site visit. I will say what's really hard about legal nonprofits is when we do their contracts, there's two agencies I really always type of agencies that I struggle at really defining tangible outcomes. It's legal and medical. And the legal part, the challenges is many times, like he was talking about this one case, he's been working on it for years, right? So it's very hard to say we're going to have a positive outcome for a case in 2022 when that case may not end until 2023 or even 2024. And so typically what we do is increase client satisfaction and increasing the amount of hours they provide is typically what we do for outcomes for these type of agencies. just because it's a challenge because some cases don't end. Or we look at, maybe we use an output as an outcome by proxy, right? How many hours they provided or things like that, which typically isn't what you want to do. But for these type of situations, it's the best that you can do.
Yeah, when I asked him about happy or good outcomes, his answer was frequently there are no good outlooks because the people on one side want one thing and the people on the other side, and they have to compromise, so nobody's happy.
Right.
And that's the kind of honesty I liked, that's true. I mean, when you do a compromise, nobody comes away happy. They're relieved that it's over, but they're not, they didn't get what they wanted or had to do. So there's nobody happy.
Yeah. So that's bridge to justice. Caitlin, you have a question.
Yeah, I was curious. So Alberto, you were just talking about how we do these contracts, and it sort of seems like we're doing outputs as outcomes. And I wonder if the way we think about this, maybe we, and I think to me that makes sense, because you described someone who's appealing, being denied SNAP benefits, or someone who's being evicted. Obviously we have no control, and they have no real control over what the outcome is and whether that person is ultimately evicted. But the outcome of representing someone's rights in one of these cases and making sure that they have that support, even though that looks like an output to us, that's a pretty impactful outcome. Because if none of these people had representation, then we don't have sort of a fair system, right? The system relies on this adversarial thing. And if you have basically, a lawyer for a county or a state or the federal government against a person who, is applying for benefits because it can't make ends meet, those two things are not equal. And so, those, just having someone who can represent that, and that person or people feel represented, I feel like that's an outcome that's really beneficial for all of us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and I totally count it as an outcome by proxy, right? I mean, just the fact that they had it. But in technical terms, it's an output. But yeah, we can totally count it. We do count it, and we do measure it, right? So how many clients they serve, we measure all that. But yeah,
we do it based on hours provided, number of folks served, that sort of thing.
So, yeah, I think with bridge to justice is they always want to increase the amount that they serve by 5% a year. That's their goal. So there's typically their outcome goal that they put in the contract, is that we're going to increase how many hours we provide to Longmont residents. So that's fine. It's always.
And I understand what Caitlin is saying. Is there more of a connection that we could make in their contract or their outputs that is a connection to the type of cases that they're providing support to? Is there that then kind of circles back to, is it things around, and I'm blanking on it's been a long day. I'm blanking on the term, but it's not basic needs, but it's connect it back to whether it's civil rights or those kinds of issues that they provide support in. So they would, it's not about necessarily serving 5% more clients, but it's about connecting on those specific really important issues that I wonder that it might be worth a conversation with them about.
Yeah,
they may not have the capacity to serve more clients in that respect, but it may be around and it'll come to me here in a little bit, but around those specific issues.
Yeah, we can totally, next year when if they apply and they get funded, we can totally have that. Because the way that I do contracts is there's a negotiation with them based off of their application on what. Because typically nobody gets 100% of what they ask for, and so we would negotiate to what is the outcomes that you can do with the money that you're getting, right? So
Yeah.
we can totally have that conversation.
Aliberto, I think in the past, like one of the things they highlighted in their application, if I'm not mistaken, was that you know, like eviction defense, for example, ties back to our overall, you know, they fit into law and justice, right? But eviction defense goes into our housing stability question, you know, and priority is because, you know, if landlords can just evict people then without any sort of due process or support on that, that's not great for housing stability.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't typically, like, again, he shies away from you putting those type of numbers because he doesn't know how it's to, you know, like Hayden said, he doesn't necessarily have, or the agency doesn't really have control of that outcome, right? I mean, because it's a legal process, but just being there to Christina's point is important, right? So yeah, we can totally have that conversation with them at the next go around when we do their contracts. And then again, for Colorado Legal Services, Crystal was there with me and Deanna. What I found on the administrative side of that, what I found interesting was a couple of things. One is they probably have the most diverse board written into their bylaws. I thought that was very interesting. They also have a very big board, and it's from all parts of the state, right? Because the Boulder chapter is part of a larger organization that serves statewide. And so they have quite a bit of diversity on their board, racially, geographically. So it's a very diverse board. And they want to have clients on their board. That's part of their bylaws as well, which again, very unique to Colorado Legal Services. The other thing that I found interesting is they have a collective bargaining type of employee interaction. So they actually have a union. They're anybody outside of management is part of a union, a legal services union. So I found that real interesting. But overall, the big concern there is their longtime founder and ED just retired. And there's always a concern when you have just someone who founded the agency, who has led the agency for multiple decades, has done a great job of growing the agency, but now there's new leadership, right? And we've seen it in many other nonprofits. That's always a challenge. I mean, my hope is that they have built up a strong enough infrastructure that the change in leadership won't be too, you know, it won't shake their foundations too much. But that's always a concern when you have, you know, what they call founder syndrome, right? This person founded the agency, has grown it tremendously, and he is now gone. So that's on the desk audit side. I don't know, Crystal, I don't know if you want to talk on the conversation we had.
Yeah, so just based off going based off of what you said, so there was a big change in leadership with the executive director. And it looks like they're gonna have a big turnover as well in some of the main employees that are working, some of the lawyers. One of the contracts are ending and a couple are leaving. So there's gonna be quite the turnover in the folks who are running that have been there for at least a while.
Yeah, at
the Boulder one. Yep. So that was kind of something that stood out to me as a red flag. It does look like kind of what Aliberto was saying. Bridge to Justice is serving, they have partnered up with the city of Boulder to serve folks with their evictions through the eviction prevention program, also known as EPRIS. City of Longmont doesn't have anything like that. And so out of the conversation we had with the Colorado Legal Services, they're seeing a majority, almost, I would say half
Like 42%.
Yeah, almost half of their folks from, or I got half and half from Longmont. And they said more so than Boulder, no? I
I think it's 42%.
42.
That's what I
So
heard.
they're seeing
But still quite a bit.
from Longmont, and that makes sense because Boulder's kind of tag teaming with Bridge to Justice and their eviction prevention stuff. And then City of Longmont's relying heavily on the Colorado Legal Services. So that was a plus side. I'm happy that we have some type of support for the tenants here in Longmont. Let's see what else. They, based off of the information that provided us, and we talked a little bit about it, they did just put forth a grievance policy at the end of 2022 for any folks who might have issues with maybe the way they were treated or the organization as a whole. So that's good to see. That way we can really look at some of the, you know, information being collected and the grievances and make sure that they are serving the population to, you know, to the best of their ability. Some of the common cases that they're seeing range from domestic violence to divorce, a lot of housing support. And then we talked a little bit about how they screen folks. So typically, you know, their screening process looks anything from looking at the case type, so what type of case it is. They look at their eligibility. Do they meet certain eligibility requirements? And then they ultimately interview the folks to see if they want to take on the case. And then at that point, they'll take on the case. As far as case types, again, you know, domestic violence, divorce, housing are some of the big ones. Eligibility, they don't serve the undocumented community. Well, they do serve certain types of statuses, but if you are here and you're undocumented and you don't fit one of these statuses, they don't serve that community, which I was kind of bummed out about, but it is government, well, a lot of it's government funding, so that makes sense. I did discuss with them a little bit about the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect. They did just create their own DEI like task force, which is great. And there's committees that are a part of that task force. I was asking them kind of about the populations of people that they serve and how they collect that data. It looks like a majority of the folks that they serve are Caucasian. And then followed by, I think it was like 200 Caucasian, 73 were Hispanic, and then the numbers went down from there. That did kind of raise a red flag for me. I really want to see more of a diverse population, or, you know, just some, I really want to see them serving everybody and kind of mixed numbers. They did, I wouldn't say argue, but in their defense, they said it represents the population of the county or the city. So therefore, that's kind of how that plays out. I don't know all of the statistics or the data behind that, if that truly is the case. But, you know, for now, they are serving a majority of Caucasian. I did ask how they collect that data. Is it like race and then ethnicity? And it's just kind of one column. It's like Caucasian, Hispanic, Black African American, Hawaiian Pacific Islander, et cetera, so that was something big for me. I would like to see, you know, them serving more folks. I would like to see more diverse lawyers that are a part of the organization. Although the board is diverse, I think it comes down to screening folks. And when you screen them and you're taking in people and you're interviewing them, those are the true gatekeepers. And so that was kind of another red flag for me. But other than that, based off of, you know, the reviews that they're getting from the current folks that they're serving, it all seems positive. It looks like they're really helping Longmont with the housing need right now. And yeah, and they were really open about all of their information. So that's some of the feedback I had.
Any questions for Crystal and I around Colorado Legal Services? All right.
Cool. Thank you all, board and staff, for that. Nick,
Did I have the
Yes. It's for the.
yeah.
okay, 23 Metro Denver Homeless Initiative Report, housing and unhoused individuals, Eliberto's issue.
Yes, it is me. Let me make this. How do I make this bigger?
The actual. Right there where it says 87% up on top there. You want to make that large?
Well, okay, so let me share it. And I'm not gonna go super deep into this, but let me share this just so you all can see it. And I'll tell you why well, here's the actual, there's the actual PDF. Let's share that one instead.
Okay.
So the reason that we're sharing this is because I think it was on April 25th, Christina, that you took this to City Council, and Christina wanted just the board to be aware of
Yes.
it. It's not necessarily a huge discussion item, but just wanted to show you what we shared with them, which we thought was interesting information. So every year, MDHI, for those who don't know, Metro Denver Homeless Initiative is our leading agency that runs what's called the continuum of care around homelessness. So that's we call it the COC, and that includes 7 different counties, including Boulder County. And every year they put out their state of homelessness report. And this year we just found some interesting trends that I want to talk about. Let me see if I can get to some of these real quick. What we're seeing overall in the area, not necessarily Boulder County specifically, is an increase in the unhoused population. And they get this by multiple ways. I really suggest that if you guys have a chance to look at this, they look at what's called point in time data. And that is a survey they do on typically the last Monday of January. I think this year was January 20th. I think it's kind of the last Monday in January. And then they also have their HMIS data, which is homelessness something management information system. And and that is where a lot of agencies input information. And so they come up with these reports. And I think they also look at McKinney-Vento data, which is data that the school districts put out around homelessness. The one thing that when you read those information, the thing to realize is that HUD and McKinney-Vento, they define homelessness differently. So HUD, to be literally homeless, you have to have been in a place that's not suitable for human habitation, right? McKinney-Vento says if you're a family and you're doubled up, you're homeless. HUD would not consider them homeless. If they're couch surfing, HUD would not consider that person or that family homeless. So that's a big difference. So this is the big thing. There were 6,800 throughout the metro area, people that were counted on the night of 124. This was last year. And then these are different, the McKinney-Vento piece. But the big thing is the unsheltered, this number right here. That we're seeing an increase in the number of unsheltered. And these are folks that are not accessing the shelters that are available around the area for a myriad of reasons, right? Everything from substance use to just PTSD and trauma. I have volunteered at the shelter. It is not a nice place to sleep. It is loud, and it's when you have to, but there's people that just can't do it. But we are seeing an increase in that number, and that's concerning. We're seeing it here in Longmont as well. To that point, in this summer, we are working with our homelessness partners to do a summer point in time count. We've never done that before. And so we're doing it this year, but we're going to focus primarily on unsheltered adults is what we're going to focus on, just to see, Because we know anecdotally that every summer we see an increase, but we've never taken the time to actually do a point in time survey. So
Does this include the immigrants that have showed up on the border and have been shipped to Denver and all that? I mean,
probably not
many
because,
are unsheltered. I mean,
right,
they're
but probably
living-
not because, well, when I mean, so the PIT happened in January. And so unless that happened, they always do it at. Every year HUD mandates it at this date, everybody does it. So there's consistency.
Yeah,
That being said, we, Christine, I have heard of folks coming up. We've talked to the art center, we've heard of families doubling up and all, and so that is happening. But I don't think it's captured in this information.
okay.
Unless they were here before the point in time.
When you say unsheltered, you're gonna do the data for the summer for unsheltered.
Mhm.
Are you going based off of the HUD homeless definition
that's
or
what
the McKinney
No,
Vector?
we don't touch McKinney.
So you're doing HUD definition.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah, because HUD is the one that provides a lot of the vouchers that we use.
Mhm.
And so no, we're not doing McKinney Med, so we're doing HUD. Yeah. So anyway, it doesn't have, I just wanted to take the time. Christine, I don't know if there was anything you want to point out. I think the other thing for this group to think about is what we're seeing too is, and it's later on. There's also definitely a demonstration of higher representation of BIPOC, of
Yes.
Black and people of color. They are overrepresented in the homeless population. That is also, at least within the whole district. And even in Boulder County as well. That's also an interesting and difficult point that comes out on here. If you take a little a deeper look into this.
Yeah,
So we
and
just
we're
wanted to
seeing
share
an
this-
increase and we're seeing an increase in homeless families.
Right.
So that's another trend that we're kind of keeping track of.
Do we know the percent of increase of unsheltered from the last time the study was done?
I can try and get that for you. I don't have it on the top of my head, but yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, there's definitely an increase. And part of it is because part of it is because we're doing better outreach. That's something else. We are doing more outreach that we have done, more street outreach than we have in the past. So for example, I just presented to a group that the mayor put together and got some data for 2022 from our elder program that we fund through Hope. And they had 1,900 contacts with 347 unique individuals. This is new data that we've not had before. But again, most of those are adults experiencing homelessness, not necessarily families. The families are really coming into our family resource centers is where they're going for the most part. They're not necessarily getting served by Hope or the shelter. So yeah, that is the MDTI report. There's a link in your packet to the report. I really recommend that you all take some time to look at it, and it's 7:30. And I know that you have a jam-packed agenda starting at 7:30. So I'm gonna turn it over to Molly and her team, and I'm gonna step out of the meeting.
Okay,
Cool, thanks, Oliver.
All right, have a great rest of your meeting.
can we get the mouse real quick?
Oh, yes, yes.
You want to do-
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you, Liberto.
All right, now I think Molly's gonna take over for some funding cycle application presentations.
Yep, thank you, everybody. Molly O'Donnell, Housing Director for Longmont. I just wanted to kind of give an introduction. We have a lot of applications tonight, which is really, it's wonderful, but it also means that we have more applications than funding available. And I would say that it's certainly more applications that we have funding available today, specifically for the Affordable Housing Fund. And so some of these projects have applied now, but primarily for the commitment and the actual expenditure would come later on when we have our actual affordable housing funds available. And the reason I say that is our fee in lieu projections this year This is the first year since our inclusionary housing program has been in place and gearing up, and the projects have been in that entitlement process for long enough that our FEMA projections are pretty high this year. And so with those projections, and even with being conservative, we should be able to plan out some of these projects for not just 2023, but ongoing. So those are some of the major themes that we had thought of in advance of bringing in these applicants. And I'll let Deb kind of kick it off that process.
Thanks, Molly. Hi, folks. Deb Calise, Housing Investment Manager for Longmont. We do have a packed schedule, as you can probably see. We've given each presenter 10 minutes to briefly describe their project and questions and however they want to approach that. And you have a lot of information in front of you, I'm sure, as well. So at the end, if we do have any follow-up questions or things like that, we can certainly get those to the applicants and get you answers if we run out of time with each one. But we're going to start with Boulder County Housing Counseling with Meredith. So.
Hi there. Thanks for having me. Super appreciate it. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, and if someone will let me know if you can see it, I will appreciate that.
We can see it.
Awesome. Great. First success. Okay, so I'm Meredith Cayley, and I coordinate the Boulder County Personal Finance Program, and I'm excited to tell you about what we do and how this impacts the residents of Longmont. So let's jump in. I'm also going to attempt to do this. There we go. Okay, so let's start with a couple did you knows. I'm betting that most folks in the room know some of these things. So first of all, landlords use credit to determine if they will rent to a family. Housing costs in Colorado are about 15% above the national average. Household debt increased during COVID-19, standing at $2.75 trillion higher in December of 2022 than it was in December of 2019. In Colorado, foreclosures rose by almost 600% from 2021 to 2022, and Americans owe about $1.75 trillion in student loan debt. I say these things because I think we all know that they're happening, and put numbers to them to paint the experience that we are facing and the most vulnerable facing, I think is really important. And my program is out here to help folks navigate some of these really tricky systems that for a long time were set up to exclude a lot of people. And those effects are still felt today. So we see folks stressed about money or overwhelmed by their student loans, or maybe they're trying to transition a job to figure out how much do I need to earn to make it work. We know these systems are difficult to navigate, and that's what we're here for. So specifically, how do we serve Longmont residents? We do that through one-on-one personal finance and housing counseling. We are a HUD certified housing counseling agency. All of our housing counselors have passed the Congress mandated exam. And we are certified to talk about financial health, how to navigate tricky financial times. How do we acknowledge systemic barriers, racial barriers, and individual circumstances? Sometimes we do resource navigation, and we talk about strategies for personal finance health and making something that works for you. And in that, we talk about credit improvement. We'll pull a credit report with you. I love to nerd out on a credit report and go through every line by line. Who is involved in this process? How does it work? What are the rules? And how do you know? In that, we also talk about debt reduction. What can a collection company do or not do? Does anyone know what the statute of limitations are for a consumer debt in the state of Colorado? Why would you? It's 6 years and 180 days, in case you wanted to know. Consumers don't need to know that until suddenly they need to know that when they're trying to figure out a debt reduction strategy. So it's our job to know those regulations and help someone figure out how to create a plan based on their personal circumstance. We also work with the home buying process. This can be really tricky, particularly for, again, folks who have been left out and intentionally pushed out of certain processes. We want folks to know what to expect, who the players are, and how do we build confidence so that you, as the client, are the one in the driver's seat, as opposed to a lender who has a project, or excuse me, who has a product to push. We evaluate credit readiness. We talk about next steps. We talk about home affordability. We do the calculations for the debt to income ratios, and we discuss and promote fair housing protections. It's one thing to have a law. It's a totally different thing to be able to trust your gut and understand what that means for you, and know how to report if something doesn't feel right. We also partner and review assistance programs. I think I recognize a couple of names on here. And we review mortgage documents to make sure folks understand what they're signing. And if you buy a home and you own a home and you've mortgaged a home, that doesn't mean that you are immune from financial shock or financial difficulty. As I mentioned, foreclosures are up very much right now. We see a lot of folks who had financial hardship because of COVID, from income loss and different difficulties that they went through. And the lender now says, thank you for having your forbearance, and now you owe us $30,000 or $50,000 or $60,000. And people are terrified. What do I do? So we will sit down with someone, we'll call the lender together, we'll talk through their options, and we'll go through the process of what does a foreclosure mean and how does it work specifically in Colorado. Colorado has a unique foreclosure process, and it is the only one like it in the entire country, and it's very short. So we have timely appointments to address this, to make sure folks know how to navigate that. We also talk about student loans. I'm willing to bet that somebody on this call has a student loan and has at some point tried to figure out what the heck is going on, because it's complicated. We want to do public service loan forgiveness, or we want to get in the right repayment plan, or maybe our loans went in default. How do you do any of this? And especially in the last 2 years when things have gone wild with changes, most of them with a positive intent, but the negative impact has been that it's extremely complicated. We also talk about safe banking, again, for folks who maybe haven't been able to bank in the past or had a bad experience. How do we work through those barriers? And then we also offer reverse mortgage education. So that's for folks who are looking at that loan product and are over the age of 62. All of our sessions are free. All of our sessions are confidential. I may have met with one of you or all of you or 10 of you, and you would not know because it's nobody else's business. But I'll tell you this, everyone who comes into our program, whether you have no income or TANF income or six-figure income, everyone has the same concern, and it's, how do I make this work? How do I make it work for me? And that's what we're here to help folks figure out. So we do that by having key partnerships, and some of the ones I want to highlight are our Longmont Down Payment Assistance partnership with the rehabilitation programs, as well as we have a partnership with the Hour Center and the Safe Shelter, because we always want to be serving the most vulnerable. And we also partner with the Colorado Foreclosure Hotline and the Boulder County Public Trustee, and that's really to be helping the folks who are facing foreclosure. So the nuts and bolts of how we do this, we offer 30 to 90-minute appointments. That can be by phone, video, we can meet in person, and we ask folks before they come in, what are your concerns, what's happening, what's working, what's not, and then we ask them afterward, what went well in this appointment, what are your takeaways, and what could we have done better? Did you feel heard? What else could we have done so that this would feel better for you? We come up with an action plan with steps for every single person we meet with, and then we always follow up at 2 months and 6 months, and in between that for individual clients as needed. So remember all these stats. I bring them up for a reason, because they matter and we really believe we're having an impact. Here are some of the impacts that I can share with you, and this is based on previous funding from the City of Longmont. So in 2022, we met with 869 individuals and families, and 24% of those live in Longmont. We found that 21% of our clients had improved their credit, 24% reported reducing their debt, 13% improved their housing situation, and we helped over 75 families successfully avoid foreclosure. 26% of folks connected with resources, and 70% reported that they were on track with their financial goal, or they had already achieved at least one financial goal. One of the bigger numbers I have recently been able to calculate and feel pretty proud of is that we have been working a lot with student loans, and as of last month, $1.4 million in student loan debt was canceled for our clients, cumulatively the folks we've worked with. It's taken years for us to get there, and over the last 2 years, we finally were seeing successes. And this week, the Department of Education put out that they had forgiven 42 million in public service loan forgiveness. 1.5% of that forgiveness came through our program. We're really proud of that, and also it's been really hard. But more important than that, and the thing I think I'm most proud of, is that we always ask, how confident are you in your financial decision making? Do you have the tools you need to do it? And we ask folks about their confidence level, and we see that before appointment versus after appointment, folks are always more confident, and that's what really matters. It's empowering folks to be able to take these tools and live on their own and make their own financial decisions in a way that works for them. It's not about telling folks what to do. It's about letting them have the tools they haven't always had in order to live confidently and sustainably. So with that, we've partnered with the City of Longmont for several years, and it has made a big difference. The funding makes a difference. It gives us the ability to work with the residents of Longmont, and we're excited about the possibility of continuing that. So we really appreciate you considering our program and everybody that we're able to serve within Longmont. I'm open to any questions, but I also know you have a time schedule, so I will leave it up to you.
I do want to state, I want to add something. We will provide copies of all of these presentations to you. Okay.
Thank you.
So I'll be sure and send those out.
Thank you, Meredith. I appreciate it. You nailed it with the time, which is not easy to do. So we'll go ahead and move on. And I apologize for having them all crammed in, but we didn't want to try to have to take up 2 meetings. And we had a lot of applicants for you to see today.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Oh, sorry, I was talking. I apologize. So thank you, Meredith. And our next project is Tyler, and he's going to talk about the Atwood project. And so he's starting at 7:45. So we've got until 7:55. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Deb. And appreciate you all taking the evening to really make a difference and a change in our community, and know you're taking time away from your families. I'm trying to get this presentation up and running. 1 second. I saw Molly say goodnight to her daughter. I've got a daughter about the same age and just did something similar right before this. But yeah, I wanted to thank you all. Let me get this up and running. Can everyone see the overview of Atwood Commons here? Perfect. So what we're proposing is 72 units on an acre at 3rd and Atwood. This will be an affordable housing community, applying for the 4% plus state low-income housing tax credits August 1st, and we'll know if we are awarded those credits November of this year. And what you have before you is a conceived rendering of a 4-story kind of stick-on grade, which is one of the most efficient and cost-effective building forms that you can build today. We'll show you the site plan, but it's surface park, so we're not paying $40,000 to $60,000 for structured parking, and we are able to fit 72 units. Many of which are 2-bedroom and are looking to serve we're income averaging to 55% AMI, and moving all the way from 20%, which is deep affordability and all the way from 20%, so very deep affordability, to 80% AMI, averaged at 55, with more than half the community below or equal to 50% AMI, which has been an ongoing initiative of Longmont. What's unique about this site and this project is it's been through 3 rounds of site planning already, so call it 18 months of design and entitlement effort. And we'll be submitting for our 4th round actually next week, and hopefully we'll have approval of the site plan and plat So a very high degree of certainty to proceed, and about a year ahead of kind of the typical timeline of applying for these credits when it comes to design and entitlement. The team consists of Sarah Bott as Welling Development. She's our low-income housing tax credit consultant. She's very active and has been for the past 15 years in Longmont and has worked on noteworthy projects. She may be listening in on this call and hopefully interjecting if I get off course. Brickwell is who I'm representing, which is the vertical developer. In total, the three partners have developed almost 4,000 units, and we own about 618 affordable units currently, and are continuing to grow. Our goal is to improve lives and provide quality, affordable housing. We also have kind of a seasoned team, including our center. It was great to see them in the last presentation. Our center is actually 380 feet away, so just a couple blocks, and there'll be a service provider in the building. They're very excited. And Mark Cowell, the president there, was like, "We could lease up your building in a week," anecdotally. Architect God and Siddick, their most relevant experience is Fields on 15th. And they've done hundreds of projects, well-established firm, and they've designed, I think, a very effective building here as a urban infill version in Longmont. This is one of the more urban locations, which leads me to the next slide. So being at 3rd and Atwood, we're 4 blocks east of Main Street, 2 blocks east of Civic Center, and 1 block northeast of our center. An 82 walk score is very walkable and is why this site is configured almost as an urban site. We're in a qualified census tract, which is equivalent to almost a $3 million tax credit bonus. And our land price is actually $2 million. So our location is more than offsetting the price of the land. And we're in the urban renewal planning area as well as the BDA, Downtown Development Authority General Improvement District. This parcel itself is ripe for redevelopment, and we're excited to be able to bring this community. So there's a lot to fit on 1 acre, and CHAFA has a desire for these buildings to function and serve the community as equivalent to market rate current modern offering. And so we've been able to incorporate 3 iterations of design, playground with some playground equipment, some grills, picnic tables, amenity space on this 1 acre site, parking, some of which are tuck under, even EV ready in the tuck under, which is part of CHAFA's new initiative. As well as in the interior, if you can see my cursor, there will be a community room with kitchenette that can be rented out. That's also where our center can, have educational, seminars, meetings, etc. Leasing, business center. There will be fitness and wellness facility. But the goal is to really provide a modern community equivalent to anything else that would be garnering, $3 rents down the street at South Main. So as mentioned before, we're very far along in the process of design and through Longmont's entitlement process. Our goal and objective is to have the site plan and plat approved by Q3, building permit. After the credits are awarded in November, we'll basically be putting debt and equity together and progressing design all the way to building permit, projected groundbreaking Q2 of 2024. It's about, because it's a simple elevator service, single form building, it's a pretty quick build, 12 months, including site work. And then we'll be able to lease up and stabilize, by Q2, Q3 2025. So that's Atwood Commons, and I appreciate all of your time. Happy to field any questions.
Thanks, Tyler. And we do have a couple minutes if folks have questions about Atwood.
I have one. Tyler, thank you for your time. What is the risk that the project doesn't, make it through all these approval and funding stages in the next, in your timeline?
Yeah, I'd say the most significant milestone is CHAFA's process. And we will have an understanding of if we're awarded this year or, if it pushes a year. It seems like these projects do get funded eventually, but we feel as if the certainty to proceed and the progress of the design itself gives us an advantage when it comes to the way CHAFA weighs projects and makes their decisions. Just because certainty to proceed is one of their major thresholds for qualification and allocation, which we've spec'd a lot of our own capital and investor capital to progress this design in doing so. So, it's a subjective process and we're going to do our best, but we will have certainty on where that lands from a timing perspective by, early November of this year.
Thank you.
I have a comment. I really appreciate the fact that you folks are working hard to put in different amenities and gyms and community rooms. I live very close to the apartments that went up over there where the turkey plant used to be. Very modern, same style, gym, pool, really kind of, you look at it and you're like, oh, it'd be really awesome to live there, and have all those amenities. And you look at that type of property and you think, wow, it must be really expensive. And I'm a big advocate for really making sure that these affordable housing units, not only serve the purpose of housing folks, but also are a wonderful place for, people to raise their families and to be at, and that they're livable and that they can also enjoy different amenities. So thank you for thinking about, the gyms and the community rooms and different things, the playgrounds, because all that is very important.
I appreciate the comment, and these amenities create opportunities for relationship, which then, drives retention and community and the feeling of pride of where you live, and pride of rentership. And I think often we talk about pride of ownership, but that same community can be fostered through bringing people together indoors, outdoors, in the fitness center, in the community rooms, and, on the outdoor amenity space. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Tyler. It's time to move to the next one. So if you folks have any more questions for Tyler on the Atwood project, why don't we just plan to send Brenda? Is it okay if folks send questions to you because they all have your email address? That's quick and easy, and then we can get them out if you've got some additional comments or questions. Our next presenter is Paul from Thistle. So Paul has a rehab project he's going to talk with us about.
Thanks everybody for having me here tonight. Deb, I did send a PowerPoint late in the game if it's still capable of being shared.
I don't have it. Do you have it? You can share your screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yep.
And I do apologize about that. I've been out of town, but super happy to be here for everybody.
That's great.
Let me share this.
And we'll go to 806.
Excellent. And you all can see this, I hope?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you all for being here. Again, Paul D'Angelo with Thistle Community Housing. We've got a request in for $350,000 to look at our cameras and for our playground improvement, as well as mini splits to this affordable housing community that does not have air conditioning part with it. If for all of you who may not know, this is at 1200 Kimbark Street. Basically east of Main Street and north of downtown, and a pretty good location for the community. To talk just briefly about Thistle, we are here, to produce, preserve, and protect quality, permanently affordable rental homes and home ownership opportunities in vibrant, healthy communities for moderate, lower income individuals and families, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. This project here for Kimbark really focuses on preserve and protect. And regarding our vision, assisting moderate and lower income individuals and families by developing a continuum of housing where we can move our rental individuals and families to home ownership opportunities, providing more economic opportunity and wealth building in Boulder County and beyond. A little bit more about Thistle. We've been in Boulder County for nearly 40 years. We have a total of 574 rental units serving individuals and families below 60% AMI, area median income. We have 103 community land trust home ownership homes, 80% AMI and below, and our CLT co-op, a little bit of a hybrid with 120 homes at 80% AMI or below. And then resident-owned communities where we have 7 mobile and manufactured home parks, 360 lots, 80% AMI and below. Our footprint in Longmont and our partnership in Longmont, we have 274 rental units over 5 properties, 1 resident-owned community, LMP, with 36 homes, and 32 community land trust homeownership homes in Longmont, which brings us to Kimbark, our affordable housing community. It's 48 units over 3 buildings in Longmont. This is one of our larger bedrooms. So this is really a family community, 44 3-bedroom homes and 4 2-bedroom homes. These serve individuals and families, these units at 50% AMI or less. And again, serves a lot of families. A mini breakdown of our request for security cameras, playground resurfacing, and mini splits. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on our request. Just briefly, why we're here today regarding a request. So our balance sheet stays pretty good to a certain extent. It is very important to Thistle, hopefully, especially during my time of maintenance and preventative maintenance, take that very seriously to keep healthy and vibrant communities that showcase well and are a part of the community, serve affordable needs, and stay occupied. We are now only about 1/3 into our LIHTC time period. Normally, we could go back to CHFA, Colorado Housing Finance Agency, in year 15 for additional funding for larger rehabs. They've moved that needle till 25 years. So we're now only about 8 years into this project. And so we are looking at all of our properties and looking ahead about how we can be better at preventative maintenance and who our partners could be for rehab and capital improvements. This property, as I kind of mentioned, does struggle to meet our debt service ratio. We certainly pay our bills, but there has not been a lot of funding for larger capital improvements to keep the property competitive and at a good vacancy rate. Since I started about 16, 17 months ago, these cameras and other things that we're asking for today have been talked about. From our application, we are looking for rehab and capital improvement dollars for Kimbark rental property to include crime prevention and security improvements, playground improvement repair for childcare, health and recreational needs, and to install efficient mini splits to each of our Kimbark units for comfort and health and control, and also due to climate change and the higher temperatures. Again, none of these units have air conditioning in Longmont. So to briefly go in, here's some examples of things that cameras could have caught to help us out with the graffiti, our fence, a table. We are kind of a hub of the neighborhood, a very busy area for families and children especially. Cameras have been helpful at our other properties for safety and security, prevention and accountability. This again is our only Longmont property without cameras. And we are part of Longmont's crime-free multi-housing program. We feel while it can provide a false sense of security, we do feel that cameras could be helpful to our community and also to stay ahead of some of these things that are happening at our property. Regarding our playgrounds, again, 48 units, larger units, very family oriented. This is a hub for kids and teens and young adults if anyone's come by, especially in the afternoon after school. And an active playground area. That playground needs resurfacing pretty badly with some moisture damage and problems to that floor to make sure that that's a safe playground and a recreational area for our kids and their health and activity. And lastly, we've got the mini splits. Right now, people have the opportunity to attach a window unit to their property. It doesn't always come out looking the way we hope. They're supposed to contact us when they add those units. They're often not very energy efficient and also can take away to a certain extent from the look of the property. So we think by adding mini splits to these units and doing the grid upgrade, that that would be much more comforting, and not only to the individual and family, but to the look of the property. So briefly with this funding, we hope that it can improve the desirability of the property, increase our occupancy, and help our balance sheet so that we can keep this property going and maintain this property. A sense of safety and security for the community, the residents, and for Longmont. Maintain an attractive, healthy, and active community for our children. Provide comfort and energy efficiency to our residents, and remain an asset to Longmont for affordable rental housing. And with that, again, greatly appreciate the consideration, appreciate all the assistance and the partnership, and I'm happy to answer any questions tonight.
Thanks, Paul. And we do have a few questions for Paul, if you do, on the various projects that they'd like to take on.
I guess mine would be, what's a mini split? Is that like a, I guess I'm not familiar with the term.
I almost included a picture, and I apologize about that. It's just where there's this, it's instead of ductwork in your house with a full air conditioning unit that you'd see in a typical home, it's a smaller unit that goes somewhere probably in the living room. And the other part of it goes out for the, lose my sense of word, for the HVAC. So inside and outside, it's just a smaller unit that kind of attaches to the wall and helps with the comfort level as an air conditioner to keep these units cool and also provide better energy efficiency.
Thank you.
Sure, should have included it.
Any other questions for Paul? Well, thank you, Paul. We appreciate it. Again, nailed it on the time. You guys are really, really good at this. And maybe it's nicer to just cram it all in and get done, right?
Thank you, Deb. And I did email the presentation as a
Okay.
PowerPoint and PDF. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Thank
folks.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Our next person is Katie Pung to talk to us about Village Place. I think you folks have heard about Village Place before. And of course, you probably know Katie too. She works in our office. So go for it, Katie.
All right. Are you able to see my screen with the presentation? Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. So I am Katie Pung, and I'm here on behalf of Longmont Housing Authority for the Village on Main rehabilitation. So otherwise known as Village Place, but we're looking to make some major upgrades, and that includes the name. So Village on Main, but it's still the same place. So just a little bit about our project. So Village Place, or Village on Main, is a 72 unit affordable senior apartment building located in downtown Longmont. I'm sure you all are familiar. It's right along Main Street and 6th Avenue. And so it's in the heart of downtown Longmont, lots of amenities for our seniors that have called this home for many, many years. It's very walkable. Like I said, many amenities for the seniors who live there. Units are restricted to 60%, 50%, and 30% AMI, and will continue to be restricted at those levels. With over a third of our building, and actually almost close to 40% of our building, is housing seniors under 30% of area median income. So we are really serving a very, vulnerable population. And these are folks who, if this resource and if this building weren't here, would have a really tough time finding those 30% apartments at the rents that are provided there. So the building was built in the 90s, but it's been owned by Longmont Housing Authority since approximately 2006. They did do a initial low-income housing tax credit kind of deal at that time, but really focused on major systems and critical updates, really didn't touch kind of the rest of the building. So as anyone knows who, live in a house that hasn't been touched since the 90s, there's a lot of work to be done. And so that's really what we're looking to do with this building. It's primarily planned to be financed through 4% non-competitive low-income housing tax credits. So I'll kind of dig into that in a little bit. But this will include a full rehabilitation of the building. So I listed a couple there, but flooring, windows, roof, cabinets, countertops, kind of the whole 9 yards. Major system upgrades, ADA upgrades, energy efficiency improvements, the list goes on, but I think you kind of can get the picture. So as far as our timeline, in early 2023, this has been on the LHA's planned portfolio for quite some time to bring this building up to date. So in early 2023, we selected our architect and general contractor, so both of them are on board. In April of 2023, we submitted our 4% non-competitive low-income housing tax credit application to CHAPA. The summer and fall, we'll work on design and entitlement work through the city, with closing on finance in the end of this year, and then construction beginning in early 2024, and are projecting about 10 months of construction. So would be done by the fall, mid to late fall of 2024. So just a note, we really have been inclusive of residents throughout this entire process. We have many residents who have lived in this building for 15 plus years. This is their home. This is very important to them. And we've been inclusive of their thoughts as well as obviously what the building needs. But through many resident surveys and many resident meetings, they're very spirited and we are welcome to those input. And so we're trying to be very intentional about obviously addressing the needs that LHA has as an owner and as a property manager, but also really being cognizant that we're in these folks' homes and they taking into account what they see as well. So our funding sources, we asked for $500,000 from the City of Longmont, so you can kind of see how that stacks out with the rest of our kind of capital stack there. So as I mentioned, we are pursuing the 4% non-competitive low-income housing tax credit, which is different than some of the other projects. So we fully expect to have this award and should hear back by July. This is the kind of same process if you're familiar with the Aspen Meadows senior apartment rehabilitation that took place a couple of years ago. It's a very similar process. And so you can kind of see how the sources kind of line out, but this City of Longmont funds is really crucial as gap funding to help us obtain the level of rehab that this apartment really needs to see. So as far as our progress, we have been moving along and have had a lot of progress, specifically in the last 6 to 8 months. So as I mentioned, our kind of design and construction team are already selected. We've submitted our full application for CHAPA and have got some feedback from them. We have a support letter from the Division of Housing for state funds. We've done kind of all of our environmental testing, asbestos radon, and our federal funding for environmental review. We have a relocation consultant, which is crucial for this project. As I mentioned, 72 units and it's fully occupied. So that's a key component of this entire project, is making sure that relocation consultant is there from beginning to end and make sure the residents are being taken care of and that we are addressing accessibility needs, financial needs, and otherwise to make sure that as we renovate within sections of the building that those residents are taken care of and efficiently and effectively moved in and out with their specific needs. So owner's rep is contracted and we are within schematic design. One other note, we have secured project-based vouchers through the Longmont Housing Authority through that competitive process. And so that will really help us, again, continue to support the extremely low-income seniors that call this home. So kind of end there. I don't know if I have time for questions, but I really thank you for your time and just can't stress enough how much this project means to LHA to see it upgraded. And can't stress even more how much it means to the seniors who we meet with, who are very, very excited to see this come to life.
Thank you, Katie.
How do I do on time?
You're doing great. We've got a couple minutes for questions.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you tell them what color the outside is going to be? Because I think that's important for everybody to know.
I cannot, and if I did, I've told the residents we haven't decided yet. And
okay. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, but we are that'll probably be.
It won't be pink though,
No,
right?
it won't be pink, but that will probably be inclusive of our design boards that we include them on. But they're very interested in the cosmetics. We have to make sure that we're interested in the major systems and really improving kind of the bones. So, but it'll all come together.
Great. Any questions on Village on Main? Okay, well, thank you, Katie. Appreciate it. All right, next up, we have Rebecca from Habitat St. Vrain. So
Are you able to pull up the slides I sent, or should I find mine?
we can do it either way.
Cool. Let's have you share them. That way I can read my own notes.
Okay.
So,
Which one is it? Let me make sure I bring up the right one.
The Habitat.
yep. St. Vrain Habitat.
Okay. I'm gonna get to share my screen. Sorry, I don't have
to take a breath, so that's okay.
I don't have a mouse, so I'm like trying to. I mean, not a mouse pad, I should say. All right, so can everybody see now?
Yes. Great.
All right, well,
or Rebecca until 8:23.
Yep, we'll dive in. So everybody else has been really super efficient. I'm quite impressed. So I'm Rebecca Shannon with St. Vrain Habitat. My colleagues Dave Emerson and John Lovell will also be on the call. We are going to discuss a plan development on Sunset Street and funding needs related to that. So thanks everybody for your time. And we can go to the next slide. So St. Vrain Habitat, local nonprofit providing access to home ownership. There's a continuum of housing. We need all of the projects that have been talked about so far. We also need an opportunity for people to purchase and become home owners. So we are partnering with families and individuals stable enough for home ownership, but unable to access traditional financing. Our office is right across from the Atwood project that Tyler talked about. That project is in a good neighborhood between the Hour Center and St. Vrain Habitat. So we've got 116 homes built in St. Vrain and Estes Valley, 96 homes still occupied by their original owners, 31 mortgages paid off. We also do critical home repairs. We are currently building 8 homes in Longmont with another 12 and another 9, 2 different developments, one with 12 units, one with 9 lined up. So we are building homes for folks once they are ready to move on from affordable rentals. And our next slide, we believe that homeownership is truly transformational. We've got data from Habitat Colorado. They have done 2 statewide surveys. Their most recent one in 2021 surveyed over 500 households of Habitat homeowners. And I know you can't read the fine print there. So basically the emphasis is on improved household savings, lower use of public benefits, improved mental health, improved education outcomes for the children growing up in those households. And then we also want to call out the industries that our homeowners work in: healthcare, education, administrative support. We've got a lot of folks in sales and retail. So these are people who are already living and working in our community. We want to give them the opportunity to become homeowners in our communities. And we're going to go to the next one. And again, mental health is something that's really important to all of us. And this is just a great slide demonstrating the confidence and stability that families can achieve once they have the security that comes along with home ownership. And Dave is going to give you some specifics about the Sunset Street duplexes that we're talking about tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. Yep.
Cool, thanks, Dave.
Hopefully you can hear me. So Dave Emerson, I'm the director. I think I know many of you. Thanks so much for taking your evening and supporting Habitat. I spend most of my time now, 80–90% of it on land acquisition. That is by far the biggest priority for us. If we don't have land, we can't build houses and can't get community support for home ownership. So last fall, as Rebecca said, we do have things in the pipeline, and then we're working on some larger acquisitions, but infills like this are really, really critical. They represent, while they're not completely builder-ready lots, they are close to it in the sense that there is not typically a very long entitlement timeline. The infrastructure is fairly straightforward. So I get updates daily from a local realtor on the things that come online. Last fall, I reached out to the individual who owns the 4 lots that are demonstrated there. 141 Sunset is in the upper right-hand corner. That may be an acquisition target later, but we now own 137 and 139 Sunset. This is a parcel on Donovan, Donovan Drive off of Sunset. And across the street from there are duplexes that are about 20 to 30 years old. And this is zoned in such a way that we will be able to, through a minor development application, subdivide that, or should be able to subdivide that into 4 lots, and therefore put 2 duplexes on that property. An environmental assessment has been completed. There are no concerns there. The homes will be permanently affordable at 60% AMI or below. We average around 44% AMI when we all is said and done. The last several of our houses, and the same will be true here, our homes will be all electric. If we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is just an example of what we expect the exterior to look like. We're designing now. So it will be 2-story construction to make, to be able to achieve the density, 3-bedroom, 1.5 baths, typical with this type of footprint. 1-car garage is consistent with what is across the street, allows the frontage to look nice. We'll be looking at 240 to 250,000, but at 0% interest. And so that really means with with escrow that our monthly mortgage payment is between $900 and $1,200 a month. Next slide, please. This just gives a little bit more detail on what the floor plan will look like. We do have a little bit of time to finalize the architecture. One of the things that we've been very intentional about with all of our builds lately is doing our best to try to get a bedroom on the first floor. It is not clear yet whether we will be able to do that on this small infill, but in other subdivisions, we have either half or a third of our homes are single story, so that accommodates more handicapped accessibility, that type of thing. In this case, it's not clear whether we will be able to do that, but we have done first floor bedrooms on other duplexes. So depending on the homeowner, that is something that we can perhaps work with the architect and get that done. But right now they are looking at bedrooms on the second floor. Next slide, please. And so just real simple, our financial support comes from our mortgage sale proceeds we expect on those mortgages to be a little over $800,000. We do have an agreement through Habitat Colorado with the Colorado Division of Housing that should be around $30,000 per house. And our projected cost at this point is $1,280,000. So I believe that's around $320,000 or $320,000 per house. So our gap there, the amount we're asking for funds is $315,000 to make that work. Next slide, please. And so we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, folks. Yeah, we've got about a minute to ask some questions and we can send them on later too.
Did Adam have his hand raised?
He doesn't anymore.
Apologies, that was an accident.
But I think Caitlin had a question.
Yeah, I did. So looking at the timelines on this one, am I correct that this one is really looking at, 2024, 2025 for most of the work and expenditures?
Yeah, we're looking at 2025 and 2026. There's a couple reasons for that. One is that we do have to entitle and replat that property, and we will have to bring in some more lines to the property. So it's possible we'll have to go into the street. But I don't want to suggest that it's the entitlement and the infrastructure that is the delay there. It is possible that we certainly could build faster. We do have other projects in front of that. So really, this is a little bit of creating some certainty around the schedule of what we can do and making sure that there are projects for us to handle, because after that we are looking at bigger projects that will take longer. So we could certainly go faster, but right now we're looking at 2025, 26.
Great, thanks.
Great, thank you, Habitat folks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
We're going to move to the Hover project, and Shannon from Primrose is going to take it away. Do you want to share your screen, Shannon?
If you could go through the slides, that would be my preference.
Okay.
That's all right with you? Thanks, everyone. I'll just go ahead and jump in because I know we're hopefully, I think for you all getting close to the end of your meeting. But as Deb mentioned, I'm Shannon Cox Baker. I'm the Regional Vice President for the Mountain Region, which is Penrose newest region. I joined the organization about 1.5 years ago. Penrose is a Philadelphia-based affordable housing developer, been around for over 50 years, and has a really extensive portfolio of affordable housing. Over $5 billion invested, 27,000 units, which is all to say there's a lot of expertise to draw on with a company with that depth of expertise. I have actually been in Boulder County developing affordable housing for the better part of 15 years. Actually got my start at Boulder Housing Partners, and I'm really excited to present to you the Hover Street development. Backing up, in December of last year, the Longmont Housing Authority issued a competitive RFQ to select a development partner. And I was very pleased that they selected our team. Katie Pong, who you already heard from earlier tonight, is also on the call here. So she's also here as well to answer any questions. So we started in January working on the Hover Street site, which is actually two addresses, 1764 and 1780 Hover Street, so just to the east of McIntosh Lake in the Hover Crossing neighborhood. And it's about a 2.5 acre site. As you're looking at it here on your screen, that's our initial concept plan. We started with the vision from Longmont Housing Authority to develop family housing. That's obviously a huge need in Longmont. So that would be larger units with 3 and 4 bedrooms. And over the last 3 months, this is the concept plan that we've landed on that really works well for the site, meets the vision of the Housing Authority, and in our estimation will compete really strongly for 4% in state tax credits this August. As you can see, the concept plan is really broken up into 2 buildings, 2 main buildings, 45-unit building and a 30-unit building. These are 3-story walk-up, so stick frame construction with surface parking, very economical. The units all stack. Our unit mix is a little bit more heavily weighted to the 2 and 3 bedroom units. And we've also added in about 18, I think we're actually closer to 20 now for 1 bedrooms and 6 4-bedroom units, which seems like a small number, but there's only 24 deed restricted or income restricted 4-bedroom units in all of Longmont. So, you know, any units that we can add are obviously, you know, going to really serve those families most in need. Also on the site, the red building you see there is our common amenity and management space. So that will be where we have property management office and a maintenance room, and then classrooms and fitness rooms that will be accessible to all the residents living on the property. And then that's sort of tied together with an outdoor space and a playground that will be accessible to what we imagine will be a lot of children living on the property. And then ECE, that's an abbreviation there. You can see the blue building in the corner on 18th and Hover. That's an early childhood education center. Also a big component of the Housing Authority's vision, and something that Penrose has quite a bit of experience with, is really bringing supportive services on site in a real meaningful way that serve the community who are living here and also the surrounding community. And so we've entered into conversations with Wild Plum, a local nonprofit that's been providing early childhood education to community members in Longmont for many decades. So we're excited to see where this will go. Our plan is for this to turn into about a 6,000 square foot, 2-story, you know, preschools serving kids from 0 to 5. So we can just go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Deb. Doesn't want to move very quickly. That's just another perspective of the rendering, so we can go past that. There's a couple of images here of the site that, you know, again, just wanted to, well, here's a good one that just sort of shows how the building will stack. And so, as I mentioned, we really are going for what will hopefully feel like more of a townhouse style of product. So, you know, lower density, more suburban in nature, that feels like there will be a strong connection to the street and strong connection to the surrounding community. And, but from a construction standpoint, be very economical to build with the way that the units all stack on top of each other. So just to go to the next slide. This site is in a really great location. Here's just some street view images. There is, it's situated, and in fact, if you just want to go to the last slide, Deb, I think that's the best one. It really shows how the site is kind of at a cross. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. This is so complicated and you're controlling the mouse. The one right past that shows the amenities. No, go down. Thank you. So what you can see here in the yellow is a lot of single family households, and in the red is more commercial, fast casual food, a Walgreens, lots of local amenities surrounding the site. So it's a very walkable site. There's a large park, Garden Acres Community Park, which is off to the northeast of the property. And again, I think what is really special about this location, especially having an early childhood education on site that will be available not just to residents, but to the surrounding community, is just the proximity to being able to take advantage of all the local things that folks need on a daily basis. And so we can go to the next slide. So our unit mix, as I mentioned, we're targeting 75 units, with most of the units at the 2 and 3 bedroom unit range. And then our AMIs will be averaging 60% of the area median income, with units at as low as 30% AMI, and with some incomes restricted at 80% AMI. So this really allows us to serve a broad band of incomes. And you know, just for a point of comparison, a 4-person household at 30% AMI is earning about $37,000 a year, and a 4-person household at 80% AMI is closer to $75,000 a year. So it's a nice swath of you know, households that are earning you know, again, across a pretty large income band. So the last slide, I wanted to just sort of land on the our capital stack, our request here is for 1.8 million from the city. You can see in the for the city funds, says 2.4 million. We've actually got pretty significant commitment and funding from Longmont Housing Authority. They're bringing the land to the deal, as well as 600,000 in ARPA funds. And then we'll be applying for vouchers to serve those lower income units as well. So can't emphasize enough the value of the partnership between Penrose and Longmont Housing Authority. That really strengthens the deal in numerous ways. A significant one, obviously, is the financing that they're able to bring into the project. And LHA will also be serving as the property manager as well. So I'll end there, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And we've got a minute for questions. Thank you, Shannon.
You're welcome.
It's really exciting to hear that you guys are partnering with, could potentially partner with Wild Plum. It's a wonderful organization and probably one of the best to serve the kids 0 to 5.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. You know, this is really what makes I think affordable housing developments really shine, is when you're able to bring in service providers in a meaningful way, right? To supplement what's obviously a pretty important need of housing, but the early childhood education is critical, especially for working families.
I'll add as well, I think the Longmont Housing Authority is, you know, as far as the early childcare component, this was a big push from both the city partnership and the Longmont Housing Authority. And so in addition to kind of the traditional affordable housing funds, also looking like at the Colorado Healthcare Foundation and other kind of funds that really try and target that family-oriented development. And it was actually a really great fit, as they don't traditionally fund affordable housing independently, and they don't fund early childcare independently, but together they do. And so again, they're just a huge proponent of serving families and giving them the supportive services that they need to thrive in affordable housing communities. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Shannon and Penrose, for bringing us over. And again, if anybody's got questions, send them to Brenda after that, and we can get them to Shannon to answer any questions or any comments.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so in between is our last presenter for 2 different projects. So this has been quite the blitzkrieg. I'm so impressed with everybody, I have to say. So Tim, we're going to talk, which one are we going to talk about first? I forget.
It's a marathon night. Let's start with the Wesley Home project. And I wondered, would you be able to do me the favor of throwing up the brief presentation we had?
Let me grab it. Unless Brenda's got it ready.
I do.
Okay, go for it.
Yep.
Yeah, share my screen here. Oops.
All right. So I would say in between, yeah, you've got till 8:45 for Wesley Homes, or you can move right into the roof rehab if you're done with that early. So
sounds good. Well, let's just kind of jump right into the Wesley Homes. And an introduction to this is our second project where we are beneficiaries of donated land from a local church. And in this case, the Heart of Longmont Church has donated approximately 3/4 of an acre on their northern parking lot. A few years back, or some years back, there may be those on the call that recall a project, a smaller project we did with UCC off of 9th and Francis, and we built 6 permanently affordable apartment units there, micro units. In this case, the Wesley Homes are a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, and 11 in total. And our hope is to use this as a really kind of as a vehicle or stepping stone for people who are in our current transitional housing program to exit out into something that would be affordable. That's a little, it's been a challenge for us in with things being what they are in the rental situation. So this is an extension of our program, because there'll be still the supportive services available to those who ultimately move in there. These are all 40% AMI. Speaking of, kind of where our target is, they're all going to be 40% AMI, and that's unique. You don't find oftentimes a build where it's all dedicated to one, low end of the low income spectrum. Therefore our funding is critical to make it work, because cash flow is probably going to be pretty limited. But yeah, let's bump onto the next little screen, or step down to that next thing. We spent some time this past year exploring our pillars, really our strategic plan, and within those pillars, we really felt like prudent growth was one of those that rose up and stood out, and we wanted to do things that were impactful, but also in thoughtful ways that were sustainable. So, and I'm not sure if Laura's in the background.
I'm here. My
You are
camera's
there.
not working. I apologize.
Gotcha. I was going to turn this over to you if you want to speak to a little bit of kind of how this matches what our vision was in the next 3 years.
Yeah. So back in October, we launched an effort to develop a strategic plan that was multi-year. So it's a 3-year strategic plan. And the pillars that really support the whole agency and help us to create our vision to provide the keys to home and a brighter future to people in need. We have 4 pillars. There's the DEI and access, strong operations, prudent growth, and relationship, partnership, and awareness. And this Wesley Homes project really brings to life that vision, and as it says here, galvanizes every pillar of that strategic plan, because it's providing greater access for individuals who are in need. When we add to our capacity, it strengthens our operations, and we couldn't do this project without building strong relationships in the community in partnership with the city, the county, the community, the church itself, and our actual general contractor and all the other players. So, and then one thing we learned with the Micah Homes project, which was a similar project like this, was that it really increases awareness of the issue of the need of affordable housing. So we're really excited, and it's going to provide that hope, safety, and stability that people need.
Yeah, so maybe we can go on to the next thing. That's a little bit of a snapshot of what they ultimately would look like. We have some design elements to think through. So obviously this is a concept. And maybe we'll slide down to the last one, which is our site plan. So that's kind of the overview. So if you imagine on the corner of 11th and Emory, that's where the Heart of Longmont Church sits. And so this would be located on the very northern section of their current property. Longmont Housing Authority has properties just across the street and up north from there a little bit for some orientation, but we're just talking about a couple of blocks off of Main Street. So transportation and access to the things that matter are very it's nicely situated for all of that. The 11 unit mix, as you can see, are situated in groups of pods of 3s and 4, 2, 3, and 4, excuse me. On the front end, we do have 2 accessible units. Another couple of features that I think are important to point out in these in this eventual build is that we are hoping to build to a passive house design, so a very energy efficient model. We're considering solar and things like that yet in the design elements. Other pieces that are unique is that we are looking to bring in neuro-inclusive design. We actually had some conversations with Chaffa and some support with them on how to do those things and bring in those elements. For those who we have a number of families that we currently serve that have either kiddos or adults on the spectrum, and considerations around how you build it does matter. And so this is a very inviting community. As you can see, there's a playground situated on the very eastern side. There will be a community garden right in the middle. And so it's really meant to invite the community as the front doors kind of spill out into the center. And I think maybe I'll just stop there because maybe you have targeted or specific questions.
Sounds good. Questions on Wesley Homes?
I hadn't maybe mentioned, but this is, we're requesting a mix of both home funds as well as the affordable housing loan, a mix of each of those things. The affordable housing loan particularly will give us opportunity to use towards potentially pre-development activities. Those funds are harder to come by sometimes, and so that was our thought. But in total, we believe the project will be just over 5 million to construct, and I believe we already have the outline of some of the capital stack that we have thus far pulled together, and where we're continuing to knock on doors. So.
Wonderful.
All right.
Well, we can move right into your rehab project if you'd like to.
Sounds good.
Okay.
This is simpler. And we are requesting CDBG funds. I believe the amount is 65,000. We had a quote from Greenpoint Roofing for 70,000 to do. And I think you also have that slide, so we can take a few that we wanted just to demonstrate on there. There's a kind of the wear and tear on those specific roofing. Quick little history. The in-between came to own 1901 and 1913 Terry Street buildings in 2002 and 2005. And in one case, there was a private owner, but in 2002, as it relates to the one that was 1901 Terry Street, it was previously owned by Boulder County Housing Authority. And so we are not exactly certain the age of the roof, but of the roofs, but they are current to when the in-between has held them in the portfolio. And so we know we're well beyond 20 years. From the estimates we get with with Greenpoint, who did us the favor of checking things out, is they certainly believe that they're at the end of their life, probably in that 25-year range, as a guesstimate of that. So it was in our hope to actually do this project in the last year or so, but in 2022 we had a number of unforeseen things that really drew down our capital reserves. We had a $40,000 boiler replacement and 5 meth contaminated units that obviously probably well aware of the price tag and those kinds of terms. So that really threw a wrench in our plan to replace those roofs. So that's why we're here asking for CDBG funds to address the replacement of those 2 roofs, as well as some of the soffit work and gutters are in need of repair, as well as they are original too. So the quote we received was around 70,000. The price tag may go up if we talk about Bacon Davis wages, but in that general area. And so we're prepared to make up the difference if it falls, if it beyond that. But as you can see, those shingles are in pretty bad shape. And then I think there's a picture of some of the soffit underlayment work we have to do there. At this point, they're not leaking, so we don't have that kind of an emergency, but of course we don't want it to come to that, because that would make things even worse. So we're trying to be prudent and stay ahead of this. But I might offer just one other thing, is we actually have been really aggressive in the last 2 or 3 years in doing significant improvements on all 6 of our buildings. Energy improvements, we've done a number of things through grants from Energy Outreach Colorado on a couple of our different buildings, and HVAC work, and beyond that, we replaced the metal stairway, that 1901 Terry, a couple of years ago, and have done significant work on our different projects all around. And so, we pride ourselves on keeping them in good condition and have done well to this point. This is one of those lifts where we think a little extra help can get us over the finish line. And within our capital improvement plan, this is the priority project we have. Outside of the Wesley homes, which is obviously different. It's not a rehabilitation project. But as far as rehabilitation work, this is kind of the priority project we have slated for the next year or 2. And then, we have a layering of other things that we believe will start to be able to rebuild and replenish our reserves to be able to manage those things in time. So maybe, again, if you had any questions on that,
Got a few minutes. Let's hope with all these storms that you don't start to leak, right? As I
right.
hear the rain pouring down, it just has
I
been
know.
pouring ever since I got home. It's just great.
I peeked over the bridge on the way to look at the St. Vrain to see what, get nervous. I remember 2013. This is what it felt like then.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, we knocked it out pretty quick, but that's what we're hoping to, and I appreciate everybody's efforts and your time, obviously, this evening and letting us give our pitch on those two things.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Right.
all.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Thanks, Laura.
Great.
Bye.
Thanks.
Are we? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And to all our applicants, thank you so much for your time and being so succinct. That was very helpful, and we're even ending at the time we had hoped to. We don't have a ton of time for our discussion, but we are ready to start with that. Molly, did you want to kind of start off? I can open up spreadsheet. What would you like to see?
Yes, but I think all of our applicants can go ahead and get to their evenings.
Oh, there you
We'll
go.
have
Yeah.
the discussion without you.
Enjoy your families.
And I really, bye, thank you. I really do want to just start off by saying it is very exciting to see such a great suite of projects to pick from. And what you're going to see in a moment from what Deb pulls up is we've kind of come up with an initial recommendation for you to consider, because there is more project requests than we have, but it really is kind of be quite a puzzle. And so we kind of started the puzzle to get that discussion going. And then we do have some comments based on our review of these. So maybe if we just hit them as we go down the list and kind of describe what our recommendation is and why, and the factors to consider.
Yes. Let me.
Is there any overall questions before we do that?
Molly, is this something that this worksheet, is this something that I can share with the board as well? Or are you just wanting to go off of the applications that were submitted?
So they should have this in their packets.
Okay.
It should be.
It's just a blank.
Yeah, it's got some blank at the bottom, that budget sheet.
Okay.
These are just filled in with kind of where numbers work and the different funding sources and what projects are eligible for different funding sources and things like that. Do you want me to just start, Molly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we indicated Thistle in their application. You may have noticed that the only real specific cost that they had included was for the security cameras for $33,000. So we indicated that. I'm not sure where they got the whole 315 from. It could be just a ballpark, but that's what they had included. So we had a suggestion there of doing 33,000 there of affordable housing funds, a 0 interest loan, repaid over 5 years, annual payment. Let me scroll, starting in 2025.
So the reason we didn't do a full recommendation on this one, and of course it's up to you all to discuss and consider, but this is just from our read. They didn't have cost estimates in there. We weren't sure what kind of work they actually needed done at the playground. And so for the playground, we were thinking that we would invite them to reapply once they have a more detailed scope. And then for the mini splits, there's actually really great energy rehab programs out there that we thought would be a better use of the funds. And Adam has some detail on that, but we could help them get in touch with those energy programs that would be chomping at the bit to do a project like this. So our recommendation is to limit the funding right now to the cameras.
I would interject that second thought. 350K for split system seems like a lot. I mean, I know you can get those retail 3,000 to 5,000 a piece. And so I wonder if they're needing to upgrade utilities to service those, if there's like not enough power, or yeah, where that number comes from. So I think it's a wise recommendation to kind of leave that out and pending more information.
Mhm.
Yeah, and right here is their full request amount, if that, if you want to refer to that, so that's awesome. In between the roof rehab, we did indicate the possibility of fully funding that under CDBG. It's a good CDBG project as far as eligibility and things like that. So that's where we landed it.
They had a good cost estimate. It looked fleshed out.
Mhm.
They know the scoop with Davis-Bacon.
Yeah, and we've recently monitored them, and they're also, I think this week, have a technical home audit from HUD or from the state. I can't recall, but and they're in good shape. They're in good shape at this point, so that's good to see.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What is Davis-Bacon? I saw that in the application and the information and triggering Davis-Bacon, and I had no idea.
So see, that's a great question. And please always ask those when they come up, because to us, sometimes we just rail them off. And Davis-Bacon is the federal labor standards that applies to CDBG funds that requires prevailing wage and pretty hefty level of paperwork and monitoring, especially if you're not very, very used to it. So we always want to make sure that people understand that it usually adds cost and a need for some expertise there. We always support them through it, but it's just always a consideration.
Thank you.
Absolutely. For Wesley Housing, according to the budget that we could interpret, they had asked for 1.5. We, however, saw a gap in their planning process of 940, 950. They are also receiving 1.2 million is the plan right now. We're still working on the allocation plan of home ARP dollars for the same project of 1.2 million, and that's coming through to them through the consortium. So we laid out our recommendations based on the gap in their application and splitting it up between the home funds. The nice thing about doing that is that they're already going to be complying with home ARP, with the home regulations. So that'll be administratively, that will help the office quite a bit and them. And then also Affordable Housing Fund for the remainder of that 940, 950 was what we were thinking. Molly, do you have any more?
Nope, that's it. Unless anybody has questions about any of these as we go through.
Yeah, feel free, speak up. And I can't see faces. So, because I'm just on one screen, so feel free to stop me anytime.
Now, does staff, I guess what stands out to me about the in-between in comparison with these other organizations is a lot of these other folks are like developers, and the in-between seems more of a supportive service provider. And so is there concern from staff about their ability to, effectively execute a large construction project? Or no?
So this is actually their second go at a project like this. It's slightly larger, but several years ago they completed the Micah homes, which is not as many, but over there, oh gosh, what's that church at 9th and Francis?
UCC of Longmont.
Yes, the UCC. So they actually, that was a huge success, and it was successful enough that they wanted to replicate the model and grow it.
Cool. Okay, that's great.
And Molly, I think we might have talked about this before because I remember that it came up. There's now am I correct that there's now a liaison with like the building department to work with folks like the in-between who aren't developers themselves but are going through this? And that partially came out of the experience with Micah Homes, but wanting to support more of those. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. That's something that the city funds. It's a consultant through Tetra Tech, and Wesley Housing is actually working with them already. So they've already been benefiting from that as well.
And I did forget to indicate loan term. The Affordable Housing Fund portion would be a loan. The home funds would be a grant. Same with the roof rehab, would be a grant, a CDBG grant. We hadn't discussed a affordable housing fund loan terms on the 471-697, if that's what we do. So we can always come back to that as well.
Is it typical that the affordable housing fund ones are loans versus grants? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you are allowed to request a grant from the Affordable Housing Fund, but it does have to be approved by council, and it's really for extraordinary projects that are, serving very low AMIs, permanent supportive housing, etc. I don't think that it's actually been done in the past, but it is possible. But our program guidelines do kind of give outlines for what kind of loan terms are appropriate for deepness of affordability and other unique features. But we do have wiggle room to for specifics of each project. And I was going to look up the Micah homes real quick while we're just continuing through to see what their loan term was, because maybe we could.
Great, thank you. So then going down, the next line would be Village on Main. I keep calling it Village Place though. And that would be for the remainder of our CDBG allocation for the year, which is 307-371. The Village on Main project already is complying with federal requirements. So it's a good use of our funds there. And rehab work is a great reason to use CDBG as well. And that one, we're recommending a 0 interest loan repaid over 43 years, annual payment due starting 1/1/26. And I'm not sure of, and maybe Molly can answer the difference between, oh, maybe it's because of rehab. This one's
Well, this would actually be towards the acquisition, because sometimes that is the easiest way to spend CDBG funds, especially in a one and done fashion, which is always good for things like timeliness and making our expenditure goals. But this is the model that was done on the Aspen Meadows rehab, is where CDBG funds went into the acquisition, not the actual construction itself, because then it doesn't trigger Davis-Bacon.
Great. And the 0 interest loan portion of the 500,000 would be from Affordable Housing Fund to make up that 500,000.
Why is the term so long? 43 years versus I see like other ones at 20 years. Why is that one so long?
Molly and Deb, I can answer that question.
Okay,
go ahead.
So one of the guidelines for selecting our interest terms is to kind of mirror and use past examples. And so the Fall River project from 2018 was another LHA property that received a 0% interest for 43 years. I believe that we're open to lessening those terms, but that's just our attempt to mirror what has been historically done.
Yeah, be consistent.
And also, Village Place is an existing property. They don't pull developer fee off of this, or at least the LHA doesn't. And so it's not like there's not really a profit component. It's more that everything is based on cash flow. So the rents that they receive, they have to pay off their debt service for all of the funding sources and go through that waterfall and pay off everything in priority order. And these properties, when they're existing like this, there's not really, there's barely any cash flow. They're not money makers. No affordable housing is, except for new build, because you get developer fee as your when you close and finish it up. But that's one of the reasons why this is like that as well, because there's really not an expectation to get paid back in any really significant fashion.
Got it. Okay.
Hover, we recommend the 1.8 million out of Affordable Housing Fund, 1% interest loan repaid over 20 years, annual payments starting 1/1/26, and 800 I don't know if you want to talk about the 800,000 portion of that 1.8, Molly, at all, if
Yeah.
that's important.
So first, going back up to Wesley for just a moment, because the Micah Homes Affordable Housing Loan, they received $287,000 in 2019, and they got a 0% interest loan for 20 years with annual repayments. So that's kind of the model to start from there. So the reason that Hover is 1.8, in 2014, the Longmont Housing Development Corporation, which is the nonprofit arm of LHA, purchased this land, and they've held on to it, trying to wait for the right time to develop. But they purchased it with an affordable housing fund loan. And so in order for LHDC is dissolving, and so LHA is assuming their assets. So they ended up purchasing, well, it's closing in this next week. We'll purchase that land off of LHDC for the same as the price that they bought it in 2014, 800,000. So that means when LHA pays LHDC, LHDC has to pay back the affordable housing fund for 800. But the intent was to always leave that 800 in the project that ended up getting built. And so our recommendation is certainly at minimum funding this in the amount of 800,000 just to keep that old award in. But officially, we have to make sure that all of the accounting dots connect, and that means that we had to have an application for this 800 basically again. So it's $1 million of new funds and 800 that's essentially getting recycled because the fund will get paid back here in a week, and then now this project is reapplying for it essentially. So that's why it's 1.8, even though the new fund and really our budget impact is only 1 million.
Sorry, I have to mute because I have a naughty dog behind me with a very loud toy. Atwood, $1 million was their ask, and we would recommend that the Affordable Housing Fund at this point can handle that. And like Molly said at the very beginning, some of these, right, we're looking at 2024 too, and when fee and lieu is going to arrive and things like that. So 1% interest loan, same terms as Homes on Hover, because it's, new construction housing. So that seems like being consistent between those projects is a fair way to go.
And also, I mean, they're pretty comparable projects. Homes on Hover does do family units and has that ECE component that they're shooting for. Atwood is really ready to rock in short order. Both of them they're going to be competing against each other for LIHTC funding in August. So it's very likely that, neither of them could get selected, but it's very likely that one gets selected and then one has to reapply. And that's just because CHAFA often considers how many each jurisdiction is getting at one time. They're not exactly comparable because they do have a different unit mix and that type of thing, but one or the other may not move forward on that exact schedule. But either way, both of them are applying now just because they need to show the commitment for the funding when they apply for their tax credits in August. Even if they are awarded, if both are awarded, we wouldn't actually be paying this out until like they said, mid-2024. And between now and then, we know our budget projections would be able to cover it. Oh, and the Chrisman 2 project was awarded 2 years ago, and it ended up being a pretty comparable award and term. It was the same term, and it was also about $1 million. So we thought all three projects kind of performed similarly on this page.
And then we've got the sunset duplexes for Habitat. I think it was nice to hear them say that they might be able to move that up. I know someone mentioned the timeline. That was a little bit of sort of meh for us as well, but we did recommend the 315 of home funds that we've got this year. The timeliness on home funds is longer than CDBG, and that would be a grant for them.
And that was, it's just gonna be the Deb and Molly tag team here.
Yeah, go for it.
They're really used to home funds.
Mhm.
And yes, the timeline for expending these home funds is they have years, several years to take care of it. So really the timeline is not, we would rather, be able to spend money quickly, but officially this could fit within the requirements of the funding. And they either typically get home funds or affordable housing funds. They don't often get CDBG. And really having that grant of the home fund really does get passed on to the family that purchases the home, rather than having to have that loan paid back when they purchase.
Yes. And it's a relatively small amount to leverage what they're able to do with that land is, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, sorry, that's 315 and it was 4 units, right? Because it was two like townhouses, so 4 units. Okay.
So at this point, unless you have more questions for Deb and I, will just let you all take the floor and kind of work this puzzle.
And I can, if you want us to try different scenarios, I can move numbers around, plug them in, and you can see down here, we have full CDBG obligated in this scenario with all our other, carryovers and encumbreds and things like that up here. Home funds. Oh, by the way, the amount has been updated since your packets came. The exact amount that we have to award this year is 784,252. So these have been updated to reflect that. And then affordable housing fund, this is sort of our guesstimate. This is a conservative estimate of affordable housing funds. And then here's, totals. So I can change any of these scenarios if you want to see something a little different.
So Deb and Molly, is this the only round of applications, or will there be another one later in the year?
I think we may have another, especially if one or both of the Hover and Atwood projects aren't successful. We will certainly open up another one by the end of the year for the Affordable Housing Fund. It looks like our CDBG and home are oversubscribed, and so probably not for those.
Okay, so this is more or less looking at the fund for the year. Okay, and then what specifically are you looking for from the board on this?
So we're going to go to council June 20th with our action plan amendment for these 3 funding sources. And so we'd be looking for your recommendation. Did I say board? I meant city council. I was getting, anyways, other board. Recommendation from your board to the city council for funding allocation. So typically that would, in this case, we thought this might be because there's so many projects to consider, the easiest way to consider that. And then kind of a yay or nay, or continue to tweak on the terms.
Question. So Deb, you mentioned conservative on the fee in lieu. That's when you say that, that's really looking at the competitive funds that are available. That's a conservative estimate based on what we're expecting to get over the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, based on the timelines for these projects.
So
Molly knows a little more about that.
Yeah. So we did our estimates in terms of creating our budget for this year for our operations budget is even more, it's less than this. But when you look at the building permits in process and the ones that are expected to reach a certificate of occupancy this year, it's like over $3 million. And we have a significant amount of program income coming in this year, as you'll see right there, 1.6. So with those together, this is our working spreadsheet where we have our funding, and then we take out what we need for admin and things that have already been awarded from prior years. And that's how we work our way down and come up with that estimate. So it is conservative in the point that it does not allocate all of our available budget from the fee and lieu projections that we have. But it's also conservative because we're not planning on funding that all this year. We cannot actually enter into an agreement until the money is in the bank. And so that's why with those 2 projects that are further out, that would essentially get us committed for for 2 years, but we wouldn't award until it was in the bank.
So it's a commitment for purposes of their application in the
Yes.
fall, but it's not an agreement that we are tied to in a way that like, if
Correct.
revenues are not there, we're stuck. Like we're committed
Right.
to it, assuming all the rest of these things fall into place.
Yes. So that's what we could say. We could give them an award letter that says, you've been selected to receive X amount of dollars under the condition that you get your tax credits awarded and the funds are available in the Affordable Housing Fund.
Thanks.
Is there a bathroom over there?
I think
Here, to the hallway and then to the bar.
I had a quick question about Boulder County and the financial advising program. I didn't see that on the list and I was wondering if they also made a request.
They did, and sorry, Deb is gonna scroll to it. That shows up in this public service category, so that was a little bit up above that other section. So our public service categories kind of, we have a cap that we can do per year, and this fits within it. And so if that were awarded, then those other CDBG values that you saw would go forward, or be available, I should say. One thing with the housing counseling, it's kind of an interesting one because CDBG doesn't necessarily love seeing a program funded in perpetuity, but we also require our CDBG rehab participants and our down payment assistance participants to go through that program before they complete it. So it's really, I mean, I think it does make sense in real life to support the agency that we are sending people to specifically.
Yep.
because it's no cost to them, it's no cost to the customers at all. So it's,
Right.
you know, yeah, they're just heavy on fundraising and things. I'll go ahead and scroll back to the bottom. That's those home ARP dollars I was telling you about that came through the consortium for those projects, just in case. And you should have a lot of this. I don't know if I included this particular section on your packets, but you do have some of it on your packets as well. Any other?
When feeling like this feels like an okay fit, would you recommend tweaks? Or totally not funding any of these?
Yeah.
How soon do y'all need a response on this? Are you looking for something tonight?
You know, if you are ready, then great. If not, we have some time. What did we say earlier, Deb? We certainly need to know within 2 weeks. We don't have time to wait till the next HHSAB meeting. But you can certainly take this back and think about it and play with the puzzle pieces if you'd like to.
Okay, well, I guess if the board, I'll open it up for continual questions, but then I'd entertain a motion if folks feel ready to proceed. And I guess we're looking for a motion to support staff's recommendation for funding. Unless the board wants more time to contemplate it.
I move that we accept staff's recommendation for funding across these projects. And somebody has to second.
I second.
Yeah.
All right. All in favor, I'd say raise hands, but I can't see.
Who was the second?
And it was Kim.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. Kim.
Raise your hand, please, if all in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? And abstaining. It looks like we have unanimous. Crystal, did you abstain or did you?
If you're not ready, you can always make a recommendation to as well.
Yeah, I don't, I would like more time, but I am new, so I don't know if you guys feel comfortable with it. I mean, I'm sure you guys could vote it on and approve it, but
Yeah.
there's a couple of things that I'm not sure about, like, and I just, again, I'm very new, so. Like looking at, you know, just the need in the community with housing, I do see that some of the like more important organizations that presented, you guys fully funded them, so I'm happy about those. But they're, you know, like the security cameras and then the renovation on at the what is it? Yeah, on Main Street, the senior community. You know, I don't know that I would fund those, and again, I'm new, I don't know that, you know, I would want to put funding into new development. To provide more homes to folks in the community versus updating homes. And I know it's such a trade-off, right? It's like, we only have so much funding, and so that's kind of what I'm struggling with right now is, you know, where are these mostly needed? I get everyone needs the funds and there's a need. Of course, security, safety, you know, updates. But I like right now, I'm just really thinking on like new development and supporting, you know, these developers and stuff like that. So that's kind of why I'm a little hesitant, if I'm honest.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I tend to agree. I agree with you, but I tend to see spending money on what you have in maintenance and development rather than putting it on something new, because if you can't maintain what you got, you shouldn't be building some new stuff. So I in general, I approve of, you know, repairing and fixing roofs and things like that as general maintenance.
Yeah.
Opposed to even a new project. Just
Yeah, the roof, I get that. Yeah, that's like that's a need, right? That's like, you know, but
you know,
paint and carpeting and some of the cosmetic, you know, I'm not 100% for, but I also, you folks do, it's your job to look at these new developments, and like you said, you know, we're looking at them and they don't really have a solid plan and it's kind of risky, and some of these grants need to be spent in a certain time. So I'm also trusting your judgment in that aspect as well. But I mean, I guess I would that's just my hesitancy, but you guys can move forward.
I was just gonna add, you know, things like paint and carpet and things like that are the things that make it actually like a place that people want to live. If you have nasty carpet that somebody's like dog or kid or whatever has messed up, then you basically are creating something that's like second tier in the name of affordable, of like, hi, we already have this, we don't need to do anything else. And I think that, you know, something you said earlier, Crystal, was really about like putting in some of these amenities and things so that it is a place that people want to live. I think the same is true for our existing properties. You know, the one on Main Street is specifically caters to senior citizens. We don't have a ton of housing that is affordable and provides those specific communities. This one in particular provides quite a few. People know each other. I mean, I've been to things that are outside of that and everyone is sitting outside and it's like a built-in community that they have and they support each other. And I sort of think like we shouldn't push them aside just because they already have housing. Like housing is the bare minimum for affordable housing, but having housing that is safe and, you know, up to date and like, you know, it's getting hotter in the summer. So like air conditioning, like I would not want to live in a place that doesn't have air conditioning in the summers here. I know a lot of people do, and swamp coolers are great here, but like not having anything in an apartment really puts a lot of people at risk from a health perspective, for example. So one of the things I appreciated here is that we've got a combination of new projects, recognizing that those take a long time and some rehab. So we're not focusing on one over the other, because I think we need both.
And I would also just add, I think it's great discussion. We have a bit of a problem of abundance this year with all of the requests, but it feels like we can also fund them. Right. So it didn't feel to us, and I'm kind of speaking for more than just myself, it didn't feel that we were having to choose one or the other, right? Because, you know, it's true. The housing is going to be important to the folks that it's important to. So it didn't feel like we had to leave anything on the table and not fund it and choose one over the other as far as rehab or new construction, or even just project by project. It felt like we could come to the table as a true partner on a lot of these.
I'm going to add one last comment, and this is just this is more from the, you know, bland logistical side. When a property is funded with low-income housing tax credits, which is the only way that you can get rental property with affordable, unless you're doing like the church model, like Wesley's doing, those tax credits last 15 to 25 years, which is something that Thistle had mentioned, that 25-year rehab cycle. You have to update the LIHTC properties on that cycle, or else you lose the opportunity to get any influx of funds for rehab for another 25 years. And then specifically, if you don't update them, you're still competing in the market with other even affordable or naturally occurring affordable rentals. And if you can't lease them up, which Village Place is having, well, they have a very solid tenancy because people have been there a long time. But when they're trying to fill new units, it is so old and there's so much newer stuff in the market that if they can't fill the units and bring in the cash flow, they can't meet the obligations of the tax credit program. And so there is, on this cycle, you will see rehab projects come through for LIHTC projects for our funding every several years, and probably a lot more in the next 20 years because we had such an influx of LIHTC projects in the last, 10 to 20. So it's just the beginning of the wave.
Okay, well, I think the motion passed with one abstaining, and thank you all for lively, honest conversation around the issues. It's a lot to pack into 2 hours, so thanks everybody for your work and reflections. So anything else on this topic before we move on? Any announcements or other business? Okay, well, thanks again, staff, for that thorough work. That's a lot of info. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? All right, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you so much for all the time and input.